You wake up one morning and the world is silent. Not quiet. Silent. No traffic. No voices. No distant hum of a city doing what cities do. Just you, and the sound of your own breathing, and a sky that does not care either way. This is the thought experiment that stops people cold. What if you were the last human on Earth? What if every other person, every stranger, every friend, every face you have ever passed on a street simply vanished overnight? Most people assume their first feeling would be freedom. And they are wrong. Within hours, something far older than reason would take over. Your body would begin a process it has no language for. A kind of emergency that runs deeper than loneliness, deeper than grief. A signal your nervous system has been sending and receiving for 200,000 years, and which, for the first time in your life, would go completely unanswered. Psychologist John Cacioppo spent decades studying what isolation does to the human body. What he found was not what anyone expected. Loneliness, he concluded, is not an emotion. It is a biological alarm, the same class of threat signal as hunger or thirst. When your body detects social disconnection, it does not simply make you feel sad. It elevates your cortisol, disrupts your sleep, suppresses your immune response, and begins to quietly dismantle your cardiovascular system. Cacioppo found that chronic loneliness carries roughly the same mortality risk as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. You were not built to be alone. You were built at the level of your cells to need other people. But why? How did something as abstract as human connection get written into your biology this deeply? The answer goes back further than you might think. For most of human prehistory, being separated from your group was not an inconvenience. It was a death sentence. There were no lone survivors on the ancient savanna. There were no solo success stories in a world where lions were faster, hyenas hunted in packs, and a single broken leg meant you stopped moving forever. The humans who survived, the ones whose genes eventually became yours, were the ones who felt the pain of separation so acutely that they would do almost anything to get back to the group. Evolution did not reward independence. It rewarded the desperate, bone-deep need to belong. That need is still inside you. It never left. Now imagine the last human alive. The first day might feel surreal. You would move through empty streets with a strange lightness. The rules of civilization suddenly irrelevant. You could walk into any building, take anything, go anywhere. The world would feel like a dream where the normal logic does not apply. But by the second day, something would shift. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar, whose research gave us the concept now known as Dunbar's number, found that human beings are cognitively built to maintain close relationships with roughly 150 people at a time. This is not a cultural preference. It is a structural feature of the primate brain. The size of our neocortex, the region responsible for social cognition, correlates almost exactly with the average size of human social groups across history. Your brain did not grow large so you could do mathematics. It grew large so you could track relationships, remember faces, anticipate intentions, and navigate the invisible web of trust and betrayal that makes group living possible. Without other people, that machinery would have nothing to run. You would begin to feel it as a kind of cognitive static, a hum of unresolved processing, your brain scanning for faces in shadows, finding patterns in wind noise that sound briefly, heartbreakingly, like a voice. This is not imagination. This is a system designed for a specific input. Other humans, running on empty. By the end of the first week, the psychological literature suggests something darker would begin. Researchers who have studied solitary confinement, one of the closest real-world approximations to total social isolation, consistently find the same progression. First, anxiety, then intrusive thoughts, then a dissolution of the boundary between what is real and what the mind is generating to fill the silence. Stuart Gracian, a psychiatrist at Harvard Medical School, documented prisoners in solitary confinement experiencing what he called a specific psychiatric syndrome: hypersensitivity to stimuli, perceptual distortions, paranoia, and in severe cases, a kind of cognitive fragmentation where coherent thought itself begins to break down. Your mind was not designed to be its own only audience. Thought, it turns out, is not a solo activity. The philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein argued that even private language, the internal monologue you hear right now as you process these words, is only coherent because it was learned in the presence of other people. Meaning is social. Without others to share it with, to push back against it, to confirm or deny it, meaning begins to dissolve at the edges. You would still be thinking, but you would not be entirely sure after a while what any of it was for. And then there is the question of time. One of the most disorienting things about prolonged isolation is the loss of temporal structure. Your days are currently organized by other people. Meetings, meals with others. The rhythms of shared life give your brain the anchors it needs to track the passage of time. Remove that, and time becomes strange. Days blur. The past and present stop feeling distinct. Michel Siffre, a French geologist who voluntarily isolated himself underground for months to study human chronobiology, emerged believing far less time had passed than actually had. His internal clock, without social cues to calibrate it, had drifted completely. The last human on Earth would eventually stop knowing what day it was. And then, not long after, would stop knowing what that question meant. Here is the part of this thought experiment that tends to land hardest. You would grieve people you never knew you needed. Not just family, not just friends, strangers. The barista who made your coffee without looking up. The stranger on the train who caught your eye for half a second and looked away. The background hum of other lives being lived alongside yours. Cacioppo's research showed that even weak social ties, brief, transactional, apparently meaningless interactions, contribute measurably to psychological well-being. You did not know those people mattered. You did not think about them at all. You would think about them now. Because the human nervous system is not running a calculation about who is worth caring about. It is running a much older program. One that says, there are others nearby. Therefore, I am safe. Therefore, I can function. And the absence of any others at all, not enemies, not strangers, just any other human presence anywhere on Earth, would trigger a level of threat response your body has never had reason to produce before. Psychologist Abraham Maslow placed belonging third in his famous hierarchy of needs, above survival, above safety, just below esteem and self-actualization. But more recent neuroscience suggests Maslow may have underestimated it. Matthew Lieberman, a social neuroscientist at UCLA, argues that the social brain is not a luxury layer added on top of survival functions. It is woven into the same systems. The pain of rejection, his research shows, activates the same neural circuitry as physical pain, the same region, the same signal. Your brain does not distinguish at the hardware level between a broken arm and a broken bond, which means that for the last human on Earth, the world would not feel empty. It would feel like a wound that covered everything. And yet, here is the part the thought experiment reveals that no horror scenario can. You have never once in your life been truly alone. Not in the way the last human would be. Not even close. Every person who has ever annoyed you, every crowd that has ever overwhelmed you, every moment you have ever wished the world would just stop for a second, all of it was happening inside a net of human connections so constant, so total, so woven into the fabric of your days that you stopped being able to see it at all. You could not see it because you have never lived without it. Wittgenstein was right. Cacioppo was right. Dunbar was right. The architecture of what you are, not just emotionally, but cognitively, biologically, neurologically, was built by and for other people. You are not a self who sometimes needs company. You are a creature of company who sometimes finds themselves alone. The last human would wake up one morning and the world would be silent. And they would finally understand what all that noise had always been worth. Not the noise itself. The people making it. There is a detail from Siffre's underground isolation that researchers rarely mention. When he finally emerged after his second experiment, 2 months alone in a Texas cave, he sat in the sunlight and wept. Not from relief, not from joy. He said later that he wept because he had forgotten, somewhere in those months underground, what a human face looked like. And when he saw one again, the recognition hit him like something physical. He had not forgotten the concept of faces. He could still picture them abstractly. But the lived, present reality of another human being in front of him, breathing, blinking, existing in the same moment, was something no memory could replicate, something that had to be